even if we say Norfolk Southern is 90% responsible for this and government's either lack of oversight or lying to the public about telling them it's safe is only 10% of the equation. You can get an essential 90% recovery from Norfolk Southern. You'll never get that other 10%.
Are you ready to get derailed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
take it off the happy tracks.
Let's talk plastics. Let's talk the lack of being able to breathe.
So in today's main part of the episode, we're talking obviously the Ohio train derailment, but we're not just starting there. And you're probably thinking, guys, this has been going on for a couple weeks. I thought, current events. And,
semi-current events.
A, it was pushed to the back burner by other stories, but B, sometimes it's good to let current events kind of develop a little bit before you talk about them, because other things can happen that can either provide more context or strengthen your argument or whatever the case may be. But now we think is the time to talk about the Ohio train derailment. So very quick Cliff Notes version of what's going on up there. We had...
By the way, wouldn't that be a smart thing for our government to adopt and our media to adopt too? Like, let's let it breathe for a second before we just start telling you what you should think.
Yeah, before we rile everybody up to go at each other's necks.
Right. Just an idea, a careless thought.
So a couple weeks ago, early February 2023, there was a train that derailed in the area of East Palestine, Ohio, and it was carrying large quantities of vinyl chloride, which is a constituent part of plastic. And in their infinite wisdom, both the, I guess for lack of a better term, the managers of the train company that was carrying the cargo, Norfolk Southern, and in conjunction with the EPA and other government agencies, decided, well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to open up the valves and we're going to let all this stuff drain out into a canal and we're going to light it on fire.
Perfect. There wasn't one person that said, "Oh, come on,
we're gonna."
You're gonna what?
We're gonna.
How the fuck can we possibly say this shit out loud anymore? Oh, but we have to eat bugs because cow farts eat away at the ozone too much. So let me eat some grasshopper burgers while Klaus Schwab is enjoying his nice veal cutlet because cow farts.
Yep.
But this has nothing to do with the environment.
Now, listen, David and I's misgivings about this notwithstanding, first of all, we're not engineers. We weren't on the ground. We don't know what sort of impacts, logistically speaking, shutting this this stretch of railroad down for long periods of time when we're trying to clear the tracks to let other cargo go through, what sort of impacts that's going to have on getting goods to places in a timely manner and all that kind of stuff. We understand that it is a very complex thing that went into the decision to light everything on fire. However,
when is that ever a good option? That's my rebuttal. When is it ever a good option?
Well, okay, hold on. Listen,
burn it.
I don't know about the validity of this claim. I'm just telling you what their claim was.
I know.
Their claim was if you light it on fire,
it's like my house when I find a tarantula in it. Burn it all to the ground. It's fucking dead to me. I don't want it anymore.
Okay.
Situation averted.
All right. Let me just give you their side of the argument and then, okay? So, what I was reading at the time was, yes, this is a toxic substance and it should not come into contact with humans. However, if we burn it, the, I guess, more dangerous constituent parts of vinyl chloride are consumed in the fire and burned off such that humans will not be harmed. Versus if we leave it in its liquid form and it gets down into the water table, into the streams, all that kind of stuff, and human beings come into contact with it in its liquid form, they'll be very harmed. That was the argument. I don't know the validity of that argument. I don't know if taking it from its taking it from its liquid form and putting it into the atmosphere in a large, quote unquote, controlled burn, I don't know if that is better or worse. I do know that post-burn, animals up to 100 miles away from the crash site are dying. I do know that there are streams.
35,000 fish or 35 million fish?
It's a big number.
It's a large.
There are streams, there's bodies of water, ponds, lakes, all kinds of things that have the substance in them. This is an ecological disaster. I've seen in some places they're saying on the same sort of level as like the Chernobyl.
Yeah.
explosion.
They've been saying that for some time.
So that is the lay of the land, if you were. If this is the first time you're hearing about it, that's what happened in East Palestine, Ohio, in early February 2023. And we have some other things to say about it, but that's currently what's happening.
How ironic. They're attacking Palestine again.
I know.
Sons of bitches.
I know.
But again, all this being said, I have a Jurassic Park moment, Miss Clifton.
Do it. Go for it. Let's hear it.
If it's so toxic in that form, the thing that they make plastic bags out of and shit, I'm assuming, the oil product that they're trying to burn off that is bad for you. When you solidify it, how was it not that bad for you still? Like, why? I guess my Jurassic Park
capable of being
my Jurassic Park moment is you were so concerned with making this product, you never stopped to ask whether you should make this product. I just don't see what the point of making something that could, like, I don't know, poison literally everybody that comes in contact with it. Why would we make it and then ship it out amongst the people? Like, shouldn't that have been in the Wuhan lab?
If it's going to be used in the production process of plastic products, it's got to get to the factory somewhere.
And then there goes my next question: is like, oh, if it's toxic in this form, then it's totally safe for you in this form. Am I to be led to believe that?
I mean, the argument was you burn off basically the carcinogenic effects when you light it on fire. That's the argument. That's why they did it.
It worked out really well for those animals and fish, didn't it? And then,
not so much.
lest we forget, and you might have had this in the topic, I might be jumping ahead, but this is a nice little segue. They told the people that evacuated that place that it's fine. You can go back. It's totally safe now. They're like, smells a little like chemicals. Tastes a little bit like, yep, chemicals. Are you sure we should? We're the government. We know best. You guys go back.
Right.
We'll see in about 20 years when we have a late night commercial that comes on. Did you live in the Palestine area of this? You may be entitled to a lot.
Oh, yeah.
You may be liable for compensation. Call Hector, Rick, and Morty at this. There's
already been a class action lawsuit filed against Norfolk Southern.
No.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here. Next thing you're going to tell me is that Pfizer has a fucking backlog of class action lawsuits.
I know, right?
And then Moderna. And then, fuck.
Anyway.
Yes.
So here's the thing. The meme that's being created for the last couple of weeks, the meme that is being created about this is, you see, this is why you can't trust big business. You can't trust Norfolk Southern because they're irresponsible. And then when they screw up, they're, constantly covering their tracks and doing bad shit and all that kind of stuff. Now, that meme is so infantile and so easy to destroy that I'm going to do it in about 30 seconds. First of all, Norfolk Southern's crash notwithstanding, the decision to light the whole thing on fire doesn't happen without government approval. So there you go, period, full stop. David's point about saying who's telling the people that are living there it's okay to stay, there's nothing wrong, you're not going to be harmed, blah, blah, blah. Who's the one saying that? The EPA, right? The government. Second thing is Norfolk Southern has spent decades, as a lot of big companies do, lobbying government for special favors to keep competitors out, et cetera, et cetera. So to any extent that Norfolk Southern grew to such a size that they would be getting contracts to transport stuff like this and then have negative things come about from it, and then have the government step in to basically protect them and flight cover for them by the EPA saying, hey, this is all safe and whatever, that's the due to cronyism. And as we've said 1,000 times before, if the government has no power to sell, there is nothing for the most powerful corporation in the world to buy. So let's not pretend that Norfolk Southern has been operating in some Mad Max style free market where there's been no regulations on them and they're just getting off scot-free and all this kind of stuff. To any extent that they have protection from liability, to any extent that they have cut corners, to any extent that they are the bad actor in this situation at all. And don't get me wrong, they are. They carry plenty of blame. But to any extent that they were able to magnify the amount of harm that they could cause and then get protection from that
was aided by
having a government that's powerful enough for them to buy the special favors from. So don't come at me about this whole situation and saying, oh, terrible, evil Norfolk Southern. This is just another example of failed capitalism. And blah, blah,
and
blah,
who
blah,
sets
blah.
regulations?
When the number one polluting entity on this entire planet is the United States military. So again, as bad as it is, it can always be worse, and it's worse in direct proportionality to the amount of control government has over the situation.
And whose job is it to set regulations?
Yeah, government, which they do. Yeah.
Interesting. And it's come out now that they hadn't adjusted Norfolk Southern's maintenance schedule and safety precautions since, I don't know, World War II, at least, if not before then. Interesting. So we had 1945-ish technology with bigger trains, more loads going across the country that should have been at least inspected, but we can't guarantee that it was inspected either because that might cost money.
Yeah.
Fuck, we don't want to cost money in a profit-driven society, in a profit-driven market. So we got to get through with the company load. Skip it. Nothing bad ever happens when you just don't take care of something. Planes don't crash when you don't give it maintenance every now and again. Like, your body doesn't stop working when you don't use it every now and again. If you fill your house with trash, you never get encumbered by any of that. Like, it's just... And whenever you see the government like, well, why didn't you guys make sure? Well, we couldn't, but there was nothing we could do. Well, why wasn't there anything you could do? It seemed like you didn't want to do it. It seems like it was a problem to do it. And why would it be a problem for the government to do what the government is supposed to do, which is regulate businesses and make them safe for, that's right, the people. The whole reason that the government exists in the first place is to take care of the people and to deal with the problems that threaten the people in respect of the people. But they couldn't be concerned with that because there is profits, right, Dane?
Well, and again, yes, that gets into the personal liability of the company itself. But let's set all of that to one side.
But they're not mutually exclusive. What I'm saying is the profits from the company are not mutually exclusive from the government. Profits for the company means benefit to the government because the government...
Well, taxes for the government, but also, lobbying money that goes to politicians that are supposedly regulating. This is the concept of regulatory capture we talked about.
They're in bed together.
Right.
So they're not separate entities, but whenever something like this happens, they always make it seem like they're, I've never even heard of Norfolk Southern.
Right. And even if we grant everything up to the point of saying Norfolk Southern holds 80% of the blame, because I'm not sure about this particular railroad. I don't know if this railroad was privately owned, like if it was a Norfolk Southern track or privately owned and maintained by someone else, or if it was a public, railroad that just lacked the regular maintenance and stuff like that. But let's just say, let's steel man the argument and skew as much blame to Norfolk Southern as possible. Let's say they were 100% responsible for the track. They were 100% responsible for their trains. They were 100% responsible for everything that led up to this accident, this crash, right? What's the recourse? Exactly what's already happened. The dust has not even settled. The vinyl chloride is not fully burned, and there's already a class action against Norfolk Southern. There is a legal mechanism where Norfolk Southern will be made to bear the consequences of their action from a financial perspective, right? So that's how a free market, a free society holds people accountable. And maybe if the penalty is big and bad enough, Norfolk Southern learns their lesson from that. Either they get driven out of business, they go bankrupt if the judgment is large enough, or B, they say, we can't really take too many more of those, so we're going to undertake the costs. We're going to dip into our profits a little bit to have better railroads, better trains, and make sure this doesn't happen again, yada, yada, yada. How does that happen? How are they held to account? By having a legal mechanism where people can bring a class action, bring a lawsuit, and hold them financially responsible. Can you do that to government? No, you cannot. It's called qualified immunity. It's the same thing we talk about in police brutality cases. The police don't get held accountable. Anytime the family members win a judgment, the only people that pay that are the taxpayers. So again, even if we say Norfolk Southern is 90% responsible for this and government's either lack of oversight or lying to the public about telling them it's safe is only 10% of the equation, you can get an essential 90% recovery from Norfolk Southern. You'll never get that other 10%. So to say that this is exclusively a free market capitalism failure, this is terrible, and if only government was stronger and more powerful and more involved, then this would have never happened. Well, first of all, in that utopia doesn't exist. Accidents are going to happen. The question is, what are the incentives to hold people accountable when accidents happen, especially when negligence is on the line? You always, and still to this day, have recourse against the private actors. You can drive Norfolk Southern straight into the fiscal ground if you want. You can sue them for everything they got. And if a jury of their peers sitting in Ohio says that they owe every single dime that, they're charged with, unless the judge writes it down, government actor, that company is out of business. You will never have that recourse against the government. So to be so naive as to say, well, this is just capitalism run amok, and to completely ignore the fact that the largest polluter on the entire planet is the United States military, and that its regulatory bodies like the EPA, et cetera, are completely captured agency for the interests of companies like Norfolk Southern, is really missing the forest for the trees. And that's the meme that needs to replace this other one of, well, if we just had more regulation, then this wouldn't have happened. That's just not true.
Well,
it's just not true.
And then look at the fiscal budget. When was the last time that our budget was balanced? Never. And what is their answer? Well, we could have done a better job if we only had more money. We need to tax people more.
Yep.
They do it in every aspect of everything that they're involved in. Like, they're never culpable. They're never accountable. And when shit inevitably goes wrong, they've got whatever legalese term Dane was saying. What is that called again?
Which one?
For the government? Plausible deniability or whatever?
Qualified immunity.
Qualified immunity. So, like, they have qualified immunity in whatever so they literally can never fuck up. And as we know from our
if they do, and it's an argument for more resources.
Right. Well, the only reason
they're incentivized to fuck up.
But which tracks back to our grandfather, which tracks back to the whole king caboodle of this whole podcast starting. It's like they've never admitted they were wrong. They'll never have to admit that they are wrong, and they'll never be held accountable for the things that they did wrong. Kind of like right now when they're just ripping off, Nancy Pelosi's out earning every major hedge fund, and she's not the only one. There's people on both sides. We, as a population, we know that the government is corrupt, and we're just like, well, what can you do? It's like, you got to figure something out. You got to hold them accountable eventually. You got to vote them out. You got to do something. If you see the trains going off the tracks, going off the cliff, like that analogy,
yeah,
it's your fault if you stay on the train and don't jump off. So if this country does fail, which I don't want to pro-con it, I don't want to bet on it, it's our fault. It's our fault for not holding them accountable. It's our fault for not caring. It's our fault for letting it happen. Through and throughout, you are accountable as an American. You have to be accountable for America as an American. That's the best way to do it. And if this latest 2023, 2022 report card looks like a straight DF soup. Like they forgot all the A's and B's and C's.
Yeah, and so if you're blaming the company to the exclusion of this other massive elephant in the room that is government, you are not only missing the most important and critical puzzle piece to the entire puzzle, but I have to question the sincerity of your concern about the situation in particular. Especially when we consider that this isn't, and again, part of the reason for the delay, not that we knew this was going to happen, but as, unfortunately it did, in terms of our delay of covering this. Since the Ohio train wreck, we have had also train derailments in South Carolina and Texas over the last couple of weeks. Just up the road from where we live in Kissimmee, Florida, there was a 5-acre facility apparently filled to the gills with those little plastic pots that you put plants in. Try saying that 5 times fast.
Plastic pots that you put pans in.
Plastic planting pots.
Plastic pots. Plastic. That is hard.
Lit on fire. Again, so vinyl chloride is a constituent.
Lauren asks work because we got a couple of them.
Yeah. Vinyl chloride is a constituent part of plastic. Again, I don't know what sort of ecological disaster is going on in Kissimmee, Florida currently, but I will say that between train derailments and plastic facilities going up in flames and all of this other kind of stuff, all happening around the country within a couple weeks of each other, I gotta say, if it were not, if these were all the results of foreign actors, we would never hear the end of the fact that we were being attacked by terrorists in some systematic way. But since that's not the claim, these news stories are relatively unreported on. I mean, I don't think I've seen the Ohio train derailment on the CNN, top news articles once in these last 2 weeks. It's like it's not even happening. And so really the question becomes, if this is intentional or it's accidental, how would you be able to tell the difference? And is asking that question more concerning? So, I know you're not allowed to ask questions, especially questions like that, because then you're some conspiracy theorist and you hate your grandma and blah, blah, blah. But anyway,
our grandma.
Think about it. Think about that, have that conversation with friends and family. I don't know what else to say about it. I just know that this meme that it's purely private enterprise and that's what needs to go and all that kind of stuff is hopelessly myopic. And that if we broaden the discussion and focus it on the true bad actors in this whole situation, we would focus on, yes, the decision makers in the private company, but also the nature of their bed buddy relationships with the politicians and bureaucrats that are supposed to be allegedly regulating them. So since that's not happening, I don't see any end to this stuff in sight. But as long as you are more informed about the whole picture, the less you'll fall for these bullshit articles that try to say, oh, well, if we just had more government, then things would be better. We would be living in utopia.
Well, I think it is apropos to end with a quote from V for Vendetta. It says, "There's no such thing as coincidence, only the illusion of coincidence." And that goes doubly for the government.